The calm before the storm. I'm Elliot, 28 years old, and if you'd asked me 6 months ago how my life was going, I would have said it was quiet, too quiet even. I work remotely as a data analyst, spending most of my days in my small, but cozy apartment on the second floor of an old boarding house in Portland, Oregon. Nestled near Forest Park, the place had this eerie charm to it, especially with the constant drizzle and cold winds that seemed to seep through every crack. But honestly, I didn't mind. Quiet suited me just fine. Until Marlo moved in downstairs. When she first introduced herself, she came across as friendly, too friendly looking back now. She brought over homemade cookies, which tasted suspiciously store-bought, and chatted about how excited she was to be part of the community. "It's so nice to meet someone who works from home," she said with a smile that felt genuine at the time. Little did I know, her arrival would turn my peaceful existence into something straight out of a psychological thriller. The first incident happened barely a week after she moved in. Late one evening while I was typing away on my laptop, there was a knock at my door. It was Marlo. Her expression shifted instantly from cheerful to accusatory. "Elliot," she began, her voice tight. "Do you realize how loud your footsteps are? They echo all night long down here." I blinked, confused. Loud footsteps? I lived alone. The only sounds I made were the occasional creak of my chair, or maybe the soft padding of socks against the wooden floor. Hell, I hadn't even been walking around much that day. Still, I apologized because, well, what else could I do? "Sorry, I'll try to be more careful," I muttered, feeling like I was apologizing for breathing. But as she walked away, her piercing gaze lingered on me. It sent a chill down my spine, though I couldn't quite put my finger on why. That moment stayed with me like a pebble dropped into still water, creating ripples I couldn't ignore. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. Should have recognized the warning signs. The way her tone changed when no one else was listening. The subtle shift from neighborly concern to something darker. But instead, I told myself it was just a misunderstanding. After all, how bad could it really get? Boy, was I wrong. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and replayed our conversation in my head. Something about her demeanor unsettled me. It wasn't just her words. It was the way she delivered them. Like she was planting seeds for something bigger. And sure enough, those seeds would soon sprout into a tangled mess I couldn't escape. Little did I know Marlo was just getting started. I simply replied with an apology, but deep down, I knew this wasn't over. The first cracks. If I thought Marlo's initial complaint was just a fluke, I was dead wrong. Over the next few weeks, things escalated quickly and quietly. At first, it was minor stuff. Texts claiming I was making too much noise late at night, accusations about slamming doors or dragging furniture. Except none of it was true. I worked from home, spent most of my time glued to my desk, and rarely made any noise louder than the hum of my computer fan. Still, Marlo persisted. One afternoon, I got a message from Riley, the landlord. She sounded unusually stern. "Elliot, Marlo says you've been disturbing her sleep with constant thuds above her head. Can we talk?" My stomach dropped. I hadn't heard a single complaint directly from Riley before this. Was Marlo really going behind my back to involve her? I agreed to meet later that week, trying to convince myself it wasn't a big deal. Just another misunderstanding, right? Wrong again. When I arrived at Riley's office, a cramped little room cluttered with papers and coffee mugs, I found Marlo already seated there, sipping tea like she owned the place. She gave me a saccharine smile as I walked in. "Oh, Elliot. Thank you for coming. I'm so glad we can clear this up." Clear what up? My blood boiled, but I forced myself to stay calm. Riley listened patiently as Marlo listed off her grievances, each one more exaggerated than the last. By the end of it, I felt like I was being accused of running a construction site upstairs. Finn, my best friend since college, noticed something was off when I vented to him later that night. We were grabbing drinks at a local bar, and he immediately picked up on my frustration. "Dude, this doesn't sound normal," he said, leaning forward. "She's gaslighting you. You need to set boundaries before it gets worse." Boundaries? Sure, easier said than done. As the days passed, Marlo's complaints grew more frequent, almost obsessive. Every text felt like a jab, every accusation a knife twisting deeper. I tried ignoring her, hoping she'd lose interest, but instead she doubled down. One evening, as I sat staring blankly at my laptop screen, A notification popped up on my phone. Another message from Riley. Can we discuss this further tomorrow? That's when it hit me. I couldn't keep brushing this under the rug. This wasn't just about noise anymore, it was about control. I thought ignoring her would make it stop, but I realized too late that silence only made her stronger. The web tightens. Things went from bad to worse faster than I could have imagined. What started as private complaints between Marlo and me somehow morphed into a public spectacle. One Saturday morning, I received an email from Riley titled, "Community Meeting. Urgent." Urgent? For what? When I showed up in the common area, a dingy little lounge with mismatched furniture, I realized Marlo had orchestrated the entire thing without warning anyone. She stood at the center of the room, clipboard in hand, acting like some kind of mediator. Other tenants milled about awkwardly, unsure why they were even there. "Thanks for joining us, everyone," she began, her tone sugary sweet. "I wanted to address some concerns about noise levels in the building. Specifically," she paused dramatically, letting her eyes land on me, "the persistent disturbances coming from upstairs." My jaw clenched. Persistent disturbances? Seriously? I glanced around the room, searching for support, but everyone avoided eye contact. Even Riley, standing silently in the corner, refused to look at me. It felt like being trapped in a spider's web, threads tightening around me with every word Marlo spoke. She painted me as the villain, spinning tales of sleepless nights and unbearable racket. Meanwhile, I sat frozen, unable to defend myself against lies that felt increasingly real to everyone else. Later that night, as rain pounded against my window, I called Finn. "I don't know what to do," I admitted, my voice trembling. "She's turning everyone against me." Finn sighed. "You need proof, man. Evidence that shows she's lying. Start documenting everything." He was right, of course, but the weight of it all pressed down on me, suffocating. How had my quiet little life turned into this chaotic nightmare? I almost lost my temper during that meeting, but losing control is exactly what she wanted. The breaking point. The tension reached a boiling point faster than I expected. And this time, it wasn't just words or passive-aggressive texts. It was official. One freezing Thursday night, as I was wrapping up work and settling into my couch with a cup of tea, there was a sharp knock at my door. When I opened it, 2 police officers stood outside, their expressions unreadable. My heart sank. "Elliot," one of them asked, "we've received a noise complaint from your neighbor." A noise complaint? At 9 p.m.? I hadn't even turned on the TV. I don't understand," I stammered, trying to keep my voice steady. "I haven't made any noise tonight." The officers exchanged glances but didn't budge. "We'll need you to sign a warning notice," the taller one said firmly. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. A warning notice for what? For living in my own apartment? Marlo had gone too far this time. As I scribbled my signature on the paper, fury simmered beneath the surface. This wasn't just about noise anymore, it was personal. Finn showed up unannounced later that evening, his face pale with concern. "Dude, are you okay?" he asked, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Okay," I snapped, pacing back and forth. "No, I'm not okay. She called the cops on me. For nothing." Finn grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to stop moving. "Listen to me," he said, his tone urgent. "You can't let her win. Start documenting everything. Every text, every interaction, every lie. We need proof to show Riley and anyone else she tries to manipulate." Proof. That word echoed in my mind long after Finn left. He was right, of course. But how could I fight someone who thrived on chaos? Over the next few days, I began recording everything. Every exaggerated accusation, every manipulative message. And then, something unexpected happened. While scrolling through old tenant reviews online, I stumbled upon a familiar name, Marlo. It turns out she'd lived in 3 other boarding houses before this one. And wherever she went, drama followed. Complaints ranged from false accusations against neighbors to outright harassment. Suddenly, pieces of the puzzle started falling into place. Marlo wasn't just difficult, she was toxic. But confronting her wouldn't be easy. That weekend, as I sat staring at my laptop screen, a thought crossed my mind. What if she's capable of more than just lies? Signing that warning notice felt like admitting defeat. But deep down, I knew I couldn't give up. Not yet. The truth unveiled. Armed with newfound knowledge, I decided to dig deeper. If Marlo had a history of stirring trouble, surely someone would talk. I reached out to former tenants from her previous residences, using social media profiles in public records to track them down. The first person I contacted was Mia, a young woman who'd shared a building with Marlo 2 years ago. Her response came quickly. "Oh God, is she still doing that stuff? She ruined my life there." Constant complaints turning everyone against each other, it was exhausting. Mia wasn't alone. Another tenant confirmed similar stories, describing Marlo as a master manipulator who thrived on conflict. Armed with screenshots and testimonies, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could expose her for who she really was. But Marlo wasn't about to let me get away with it. Late one night, as I worked late finishing a report, the power suddenly cut out. Darkness enveloped the room, leaving only the faint glow of streetlights filtering through my curtains. I fumbled for my phone, heart racing. A quick check revealed the breaker box had been tampered with again. This time, though, I wasn't going to stay silent. Wrapping myself in a blanket against the biting cold, I marched downstairs and knocked on Marlo's door. When she answered, her expression shifted from smug satisfaction to surprise. "Elliot," she said, feigning innocence. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" I shot back, my voice trembling with anger. "You know exactly what's wrong. You sabotaged my electricity for no reason." Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, her mask slipped. "Careful, Elliot," she hissed, her tone icy. "You wouldn't want things to escalate further, would you?" It was a threat, plain and simple. But instead of backing down, I felt a surge of defiance. No more games. No more manipulation. The next morning, I sent Riley an email containing all the evidence I'd gathered. Screenshots of Marlo's past behavior, testimonies from former tenants, and photos of the damaged breaker box. I ended the message with a single line: "This needs to stop before it gets worse." Riley's reply came hours later, curt and dismissive. "Let's discuss this in person." As I prepared for the inevitable confrontation, I realized something important. Marlo might have spun her web tightly around me, but I was finally ready to cut myself free. That night, sitting alone in the dark, I reflected on everything that had led me here. The fear, the frustration, the endless cycle of gaslighting, it had all culminated in this moment. And I knew without a doubt that I couldn't go back to the way things were. In the pitch-black silence, I realized something terrifying yet liberating. I had nothing left to lose. The counterattack. I'd spent weeks gathering evidence, documenting every lie, every manipulation, and every twisted accusation Marlo had thrown my way. It felt like building a case against a criminal, and in many ways, that's exactly what she was. With Finn's help, I compiled everything into a single email: screenshots of her messages, audio clips of her passive-aggressive comments, and even written testimonies from former tenants who'd suffered under her reign of chaos. "This is it," Finn said, leaning over my shoulder as I hit send. "No turning back now." "No turning back," I echoed, though my stomach churned with nerves. What if Riley dismissed it all? What if Marlo found a way to twist the narrative again? The response came sooner than I expected. Riley called me into her office the very next morning. As I walked in, I noticed Marlo already seated there, her arms crossed and a smug grin plastered across her face. My heart sank. Of course she'd be here. She always seemed to stay one step ahead. "Elliot," Riley began, her tone clipped. "Marlo claims you've been harassing her. She says you're retaliating for her complaints." My jaw tightened. Harassing? Retaliating? This was unbelievable. Before I could respond, Marlo leaned forward, her voice dripping with faux concern. "It's true, Riley. He's been sending me aggressive texts accusing me of things I didn't do. I just wanted peace and quiet." Peace and quiet? The hypocrisy made my blood boil. But instead of losing control, I took a deep breath and slid my folder across the desk. "Here's the truth," I said firmly. Messages, photos, recordings, all proving that she's the one causing problems. Riley hesitated, flipping through the documents. For a moment, I thought I saw doubt flicker in her eyes. But Marlo wasn't about to let this slide. "That's all fabricated," she snapped, her composure cracking slightly. "He's trying to ruin my reputation." Watching her unravel was both satisfying and infuriating. This woman had manipulated everyone around her, including Riley, for months. But now, for the first time, cracks were starting to show. As the meeting ended, Riley promised to look into it further. Translation: she still didn't trust me entirely. But I didn't care. By standing up to Marlo, I'd taken the first real step toward reclaiming my life. Later that night, as I sat alone in my apartment, I reflected on how far I'd come. Fighting back wasn't easy. It felt like boxing in the dark, throwing punches without knowing if they'd land. But I couldn't give up now. Not when I was finally starting to see light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't know if I'd win this fight, but at least I wasn't afraid anymore. The fallout. The fallout from that meeting spread faster than wildfire. Word got around that I'd accused Marlo of harassment, and suddenly, everyone had an opinion. Some tenants sided with her, convinced by her sob stories and dramatic outbursts. Others, however, started questioning her motives, especially after hearing rumors about her past behavior. Tension reached its peak one evening when Marlo tried to rally support in the common area. Standing in the center of the room, she addressed the small crowd gathered there. "Elliot's been spreading lies about me," she declared, her voice trembling with fake vulnerability. "He's trying to turn everyone against me because he can't handle criticism." Her performance would have fooled anyone who didn't know the truth. But I did. And so did Finn, who stood beside me, glaring daggers at her. "Don't listen to her," I said loudly, stepping forward. "She's manipulating you all. Ask yourselves, why does she always make everything about her?" For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Then whispers erupted, some siding with Marlo, others nodding along with me. The division was clear and suffocating. Things escalated quickly after that. Late one night, as I returned home from grabbing dinner, I found my door lock damaged, the metal bent and scratched. Someone had tried to break in. Adrenaline surged through me as I dialed 911. When the police arrived, I pointed them toward Marlo's apartment. Predictably, she denied everything, claiming innocence with tear-filled eyes. But the officers weren't buying it. "You'll need to come down to the station to file a report," one officer told me. Filing that report felt like the final straw. Marlo's mask was slipping, and she knew it. That night, lying awake in bed, I replayed the events in my mind. The fear, the anger, the frustration, it all swirled together like a storm refusing to pass. But beneath it all, something else emerged, resolve. This time, I wasn't shaking. I was ready to face whatever came next. The turning tide. The investigation moved quickly. Within days, the police uncovered Marlo's history of harassment charges from previous addresses. It wasn't hard to connect the dots once they dug deeper. When Riley called me into her office again, her demeanor had shifted entirely. Gone was the stern skepticism. Instead, she looked almost apologetic. "Elliot," she said, sighing heavily, "I owe you an apology. I should have listened sooner." Her words caught me off guard. For months, she'd sided with Marlo, dismissing my concerns as trivial. Now, faced with undeniable evidence, she finally saw the truth. "I'm giving Marlo one final warning," Riley continued. "If there's any more trouble, she's out." While Riley's decision brought relief, Marlo wasn't ready to admit defeat. She doubled down, spreading more lies and attempting to sway other tenants to her side. But her tactics were losing their power. One tenant, a quiet older man named Greg, approached me later that week. "You were right about her," he admitted, his voice low. "She's been stirring drama since day one. We just didn't see it until now." His words meant more than he realized. Slowly but surely, the tide was turning. Other tenants began sharing their own experiences, confirming what I'd suspected all along. Marlo thrived on chaos, and we'd all been pawns in her game. Despite the progress, I couldn't shake the lingering unease. Like emerging from a storm only to find the sky still overcast, I knew the battle wasn't truly over yet. I didn't know if I could fix everything, but at least I'd found freedom. The final confrontation. It was a crisp Friday morning when Riley made her announcement. Word spread quickly through the boarding house. Marlo had been evicted. According to Riley, it wasn't just my complaints that sealed her fate. It was her own actions. After the police investigation revealed her history of harassment and property damage, Riley decided she couldn't risk keeping her as a tenant any longer. "She's gone," Riley told me during a brief meeting. "Her keys were confiscated this morning." The news hit me like a tidal wave. Relief washed over me, but it was mixed with a strange sense of disbelief. Could it really be over? Marlo didn't leave quietly. That afternoon, as I stepped out of my apartment, I found her waiting in the hallway. Her eyes burned with fury, her usual charm replaced by raw anger. "You think you've won?" she spat, stepping closer. "This isn't over, Elliot. You'll regret crossing me." For a moment, fear prickled at the edges of my mind. But then I remembered everything she put me through. The lies, the manipulation, the constant attacks on my peace of mind. This time I stood firm. "Go ahead and try." I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. But you're done here. Leave me alone. Her face twisted into something ugly, but she didn't respond. Instead, she turned and stormed away, dragging her suitcase behind her. Watching her disappear down the stairs felt surreal, like closing a chapter one never wanted to write. Later that evening, as I sat on my couch staring at the now silent ceiling above, I reflected on how much had changed. For months, I'd lived under the shadow of her toxicity, constantly walking on eggshells. Now the weight of her presence was finally gone. I watched her walk away, realizing that victory wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming myself. Moving on. Life without Marlo was quieter. In a way, it reminded me of those early days before she moved in. Except now I carried the scars of everything she'd done. Scars, but also lessons. Finn threw a small celebration for me one weekend, inviting a few close friends over to my place. It wasn't anything fancy, just pizza, beer, and laughter, but it meant the world to me. As we sat around reminiscing about the chaos of the past few months, Finn raised his glass. To boundaries, he said with a grin, and to kicking toxic people to the curb. The room erupted in cheers, but his words lingered with me long after the party ended. Boundaries. That was the key word, wasn't it? For so long I'd let Marlo push me around, afraid to stand up for myself. But fighting back had taught me something invaluable. Protecting your space and your sanity isn't selfish, it's necessary. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I started taking weekend hikes in Forest Park, finding solace in the towering trees and fresh air. Work felt less suffocating, and even the rain-soaked streets of Portland seemed brighter somehow. Still, I couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if I hadn't fought back. Would I still be trapped in that cycle of fear and frustration? Probably. But looking back, I realized that sometimes the hardest battles lead to the greatest growth. One evening, as I sat by my window watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, I thought about the journey I'd been through. Facing Marlo hadn't just been about winning. It had been about learning to say no, to protect myself, and to trust my instincts. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real victory. Sometimes, to find light, you have to walk through the darkness. As I closed the blinds and turned back to my quiet apartment, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't the same person who had first met Marlo all those months ago. And that, more than anything, was worth celebrating.